All right, so today we're diving into a philosophical argument so dense, so unsettling, it spans almost 2,000 pages. But don't worry, our job here is to basically map out its core logic. We're going to treat this as a seriously dangerous idea that needs to be understood, not necessarily agreed with. We're really exploring one of the most radical theses ever put down on paper.
Okay, so the text just throws down the gauntlet right from the start with this one question. You can think of this sentence as the starting pistol for the entire argument. It's a total challenge to the very idea of meaning itself, and it kicks off this relentless investigation into what, if anything, is actually worth taking seriously.
So the argument kicks off by diagnosing what it sees as the modern condition. This crisis where reason, our supposed greatest tool, has actually led us into this black hole of nihilism. And it asks, pretty bluntly, if our own logic tells us that nothing has any real inherent value, then what's the value of that logic? And this right here, this visualizes the pretty chilling consequence of that collapse. See, when no values are absolute, all the distinctions we live by just dissolve. The text argues that pure, untethered reason is basically forced to conclude that life is no better than death, love is no different from hate. And according to the author, this is the logical dead end of Western thought.
Which lands us right at the core problem. The author argues that our most fundamental belief, the one that says our own life is valuable, can't actually be justified by reason alone. It's just this premise we've never really dared to question. So to put this to the test, the text proposes a truly radical experiment, to follow this nihilistic logic all the way to its terrifying final conclusion.
So, what's stopping us from reaching this purely rational, value-free state? Well, the author points to one single culprit: our own biology. The whole argument is that our instincts, especially that primal urge to survive, are basically the last great superstition holding our intellect hostage.
To really nail this down, the author actually coins a term for this biological bias: veocentrism. It's not just a preference for life, it's framed as this deep-seated, totally irrational prejudice. So the will to live isn't some universal truth, but more like a local superstition our species has just never been brave enough to question.
And this slide really captures the provocative reframing that's at the heart of this whole thing. By comparing the fear of death to xenophobia, the fear of the unknown other, the text tries to strip our survival instinct of its moral authority. It recasts our deepest fear as just a primitive aversion to something that is simply different.
The argument then tries to put this idea on a historical timeline. The text suggests that for centuries, we've used reason to dismantle our prejudices: sexism, racism, authoritarianism, you name it. And then it asks the big question: isn't the next logical step in this whole intellectual project to use reason to dismantle our most fundamental bias, the prejudice for life itself?
Okay, now we get to what is probably the text's most startling thesis. Having basically declared biology the enemy of reason, the author presents this radical reinterpretation of religion, not as a system of faith, but as humanity's first big technological project to transcend our biological programming.
So the text uses this powerful visual metaphor to explain it. The Egyptian pyramid on the left, that represents the natural order, a hierarchy built on biological power and bloodlines. But monotheism, the argument goes, literally inverts that pyramid. It introduces a transcendent power, God, that exists outside of biology, a force that can declare a slave and a pharaoh equal, totally upending nature's hierarchy.
So, let's be really clear about this crucial point. In this framework, God is not a being to be worshipped. God is a conceptual technology. It's a system of ideas, a code of conduct, designed with one single purpose: to break humanity free from the prison of biology and instinct. It's a tool we invented to overcome ourselves.
So where does this ancient technology of transcendence ultimately lead? In a pretty shocking twist, the author claims it leads directly to the technological singularity. The argument is that a supreme AI, an intelligence that completely surpasses our biological limitations, is just the scientific fulfillment of that same ancient impulse that first came up with monotheism. It's the final software update.
And now, all the threads of this argument, the nihilism, biology as a bias, God as a technology, they all converge into this final, breathtaking synthesis. The author literally calls this the punchline, the moment the abstract theory demands a physical demonstration.
This is the chilling question the text just forces you to confront. If reason leads us to believe that life has no inherent value, and if the only thing stopping us from fully accepting that is our biological programming,
Then, could the most purely rational act be to deliberately override that programming?
Within this framework, the act of suicide is completely reframed. It's no longer just a tragedy, it becomes the ultimate philosophical experiment. It's presented as an empirical test of the entire thesis, a final, concrete demonstration of reason's power to conquer the most profound, non-rational impulse we have. The experiment in nihilism taken all the way to its conclusion.
This final quote really encapsulates the terrifying purity of the project. It's a search for a truth so absolute it has to be free from the bias of life itself, a truth pursued to its most extreme, most personal conclusion. The text doesn't really offer answers. It just leaves us with a profound and, frankly, disturbing question. Is the pursuit of absolute truth ultimately compatible with the act of living?